I was watching an episode of Clone Force 99's The Bad Batch on Disney Plus. As a Star Wars fan, I have always been intrigued by all the weapons that they use outside of just the lightsabers. Hunter, which is one of my favorite members of the Bad Batch, has always been ready with his dual pistols ready to go for the ready at any time. But a question I had on my mind was, if I made a pistol for Hunter, what would it be like? What would it sound like? Would he be proud of this particular build? So I thought I'd go on this quest to find out. Hey everybody, Troy McClure from Troy Tactical Defense here, coming at you in the early summer of 2023. I'm so sorry that I've been away for a few other projects I've had to take care of. I've even started a few videos but weren't able to finish them until recently, so stay tuned for a lot more content coming up. I know that I always seem to say that, and then next thing you know, it's like months before I have something completely done. But this time I'm really serious. I've got some dedicated time put aside for these kinds of builds. And honestly, I wanted to get your feedback. Find out what would you do in this place, in this day and age, about using different types of Glock clones now that the Gen 3 patents have been finished. What would it look like? How would it perform? Well, let's find out. This one is actually a second in a series of small special videos that I've dedicated to Star Wars themed Glock builds. I put these together mainly because of the fact that I was rather curious to see if I could actually make a successful Glock build, but I wanted to also make sure that I had something that was kind of fun for training students in addition to myself when I don't feel like putting my nice Gen 4 through the ringer. As I said earlier, I've always wanted to make my own Glock, but always afraid to do so. Not because of the lack of information or even lack of tool availability for me to put this together, but I just wasn't sure if I was making something like out of the 1986 movie The Manhattan Project, starring John Lithgow and Christopher Collette, in which I would make something that would potentially blow up in my face. But I digress. I just had to trust myself and hope that the parts that I chose worked, and that whoever I got those parts from had some damn good customer service in case something went wrong in terms of fitment or utility or even reliability. See, my brother a few years ago explained that he had a hell of a time making his own Glock clone because he always wanted to keep his Glock 19X in pristine condition. Well, when he made this clone, it didn't turn out very well, and I mean he went all out on the parts. Graco's precision slide and barrel, Agency Yard's trigger group and package, and I think maybe even a GGP combat frame, I don't know, just the works. Anyway, after all of that time, work, effort, and money, it looked really sexy, but it was just performed horribly, and after just this one attempt, he decided that after this point, he'd never do anything else again and just go with God. Well, that was 2020, and things have really moved forward with options and availability thanks to the end of that patent. So, thanks to PSA and P80, poor guys, now you have an entire treasure trove full of companies for frames, trigger packages, barrels, internal components, and then you can choose even whether or not the slide itself is set for the Mar slide optic. And a quick note to the manufacturers of reflex optics for pistols, especially Vortex, wink wink, do me a favor, stop making things difficult. Just go with the RMR pattern like everybody else. You'll sell a ton more optics if you did. Now, full disclaimer, just letting YouTube know really far in advance before they get their underwear in a knot that this is not a video about how to build anything or how to circumvent anything that is outside of a standard field strip of a pistol for cleaning and maintenance. So please, YouTube, don't give me a strike simply because I take the barrel out of the slide to show the recoil spring or how the barrel looks, okay? This is a basic field strip. This is how anyone who uses a semi-automatic pistol would be able to want to clean their firearm. So please, just chill. So back to Hunter's pistol, what I call Becca 19. I mean, honestly, even though Wrecker from this series is just my absolute favorite clone in the Star Wars series, with his unfiltered, impetuous, childish-like sense of humor, I do think that Rex and Mayday come second, and Hunter is actually in third place for me when it comes to this. But the fact that I had his helmet as part of my Star Wars collection, I just had to find a way to make things a bit different. So in comes AIM, you know the rest of the name of this company, which started making their ported barrels and matching Gen 3 slides a bit over a year ago. And I was always curious about the idea of having a ported barrel. I never had one before. I really did want to know, does it really mitigate recoil like people claim that it did? I know that it looked really cool seeing all the visible flash coming out of the top of the barrel like something straight out of the first Matrix movie or something from Mad Max Fury Road. But I just wanted to make sure that this thing wasn't going to give me any problems, like muzzle flash blindness, extreme loss of projectile velocity, etc. By the way, shouts out to Focus Tripp for giving me the confidence to go through with this slide and barrel purchase. So here you go for a few seconds. Here's a list for the lazy, just to see what I finally came up with. Let me know what you think. I'll wait. So was this clone really that simple to put together? I mean, we all know Glocks and the simplicity of design and ease of use. It's so easy, in fact, sometimes it makes me wonder whether or not there's some sort of sorcerer's spell being used when it comes to this thing. Why aren't more companies all using this type of design? Like HK or Smith & Wesson. Was Gaston smoking some of his curtain rods from the 1960s so that this design concept was a hallucination? I really can't answer that. But either way, it definitely took a lot less time than my brother had claimed to put this thing together, and there was a lot less difficulty in its execution. But there was definitely a learning curve, I'll tell you that. Not gonna lie, I like the SCT. Not only are they made of quality construction, but it's amazing for what you get for the price. It has great texturing that you can have rattle canned or Cerakoted and doesn't lose its grip. It's got memory pads, or I think they call them gas pedals, for supported thumb placement. The grip angle is much better than the original Glock frame. And as of this year, they're like $40 to $50 from Primary Arms or from other distributors like AIM. Now, granted, just like anything else that you buy nowadays, it has to be sent out to an FFL and you have to fill out a 4473 like you would any other firearm or firearm frame. Thanks, ATF. But even still, with the fees included in that, you're well under $100 to have a great frame that's going to be able to do the job. Get a Glock Gen 3 pin kit from Strike Industries, a good trigger kit and trigger housing, and you're good to go. It even comes with a polished locking block, and that's about it, so you can't really complain about it. I actually have several SCT frames in some future builds that I'll be able to use, and I have to admit it's one of my favorites. Now, having said that, I still do kind of have a thing for the PSA dagger frame and its ergonomics, but the SCT is actually pretty awesome. So much so that even Anderson Manufacturing's Kiger 9C uses it as part of its stand-up pistol platform. Okay, a couple of hiccups. Here's where those come in, and I'm not going to show any footage of the assembly due to YouTube's nonsense and their policies. But as easy as it was to get almost any trigger housing and assembly to fit into one of these frames, I do admit for some reason the SCT is a little bit picky with which trigger housing that you use. Now, 99% of the original Glock trigger housings line up just fine with the frame, no problem. The rear pin goes right in securely and it keeps the trigger housing set as where it needs to be. However, for some reason, and I think it's just because sometimes the way that the polymer frame comes out from the molding, once in a while you might get a bad one, but it has some difficulty in getting other companies to fit. I can't tell you which ones because I honestly don't remember. And you would think that a trigger housing is a trigger housing is a trigger housing, but I think you get what I mean. If I were to do this all over again, I'd honestly stick with a trigger housing from a reputable company and not just get any trigger housing from some place cheap. AIM used to sell an aftermarket lower parts kit, but I don't really see it anymore on their site, so I think that's just a good thing. In my honest opinion, just get one for a Glock, especially if you have a spare sitting around. You can always get good stuff from Ghost Inc., especially the trigger spring. Hopefully you get a nice kit that has a trigger spring for the housing also, as you'll need it. Now, I don't know about you, but the slide takedown tabs on Glocks tend to piss me off. They're not nearly as nice as the ones used on a Canik or Walt pistols, but if you're a Glock owner, you've gotten used to it by this point. But this is kind of where I get a little bit of a thumbs down for the SCT frame. I do recommend getting an extended slide lock or takedown lever or whatever you want to call it, and that is because the location of the takedown on that SCT frame is on one of the thickest parts of the frame, so getting a good grip is really important in order to use the takedown to release the slide. Now, for some reason, I didn't need one for Project Artemis, which is coming soon in another video, but I definitely needed this for the Becca 19. Okay, when it comes to the recoil spring from AIM, this is where they really kind of need to get their act together. The upper parts kit for these slides comes with a polymer guide rod, and it is absolutely dreadful. Luckily, they sell some stainless steel guide rods, but instead of dealing with that back and forth and dealing with customer service, I kept it simple and just got one from Lone Wolf, as they've always been pretty solid for me. In fact, you can even use a nice stainless steel guide rod from PSA. It's one that I do recommend most for this, as I had zero hiccups dealing with any failure to ejects going from the AIM to the PSA stainless steel guide rod. But whichever one you decide to use, just lubricate it well and you should be good to go. Now, when it comes to trigger selection, actually, this is my favorite part of being able to put Glock builds together. Pick whichever one you want, as long as it fits the Gen 3 system. Gen 1 through 4 is where most seem to get the same design. Now, even though I've given a few pros and cons of the AIM equipment, I have to honestly say that the AIM slide has become more impressive as well as our other products over the last few years. The internal parts for the upper slide kit actually works pretty well. The firing pins are the same dimensions as a Glock, and the extractor springs, and firing pin springs seem quite good. I did switch out the AIM firing pin spring for one that was OEM Glock using a 6.6 pound firing pin spring, but that's just because I wanted more reliability in case I dropped this thing in the dirt from training or something else. I also used Maritime spring cups for the firing pin spring assembly. In the end, actually, I was truly impressed, and my wife absolutely loves it. I used a nice Zev Pro drop-in trigger kit and connector in this build, and my wife even used it in her Advanced Handgun 1 and Handgun 2 classes with the simple HoloSun 407C 3 MOA red dot. Now, I've since changed it to the 8 MOA circle for some testing, and really I found it to be a lot better than the 3 MOA dot. But maybe that's just because of my aging eyes, and the larger dot works better, especially at closer distances where you would expect to see some CQC. Please, if you could, just make sure that you understand that the ported barrel gets a bit dirty quickly, and Becca is actually louder than most other ones on the range. You can almost feel the percussive forces that are coming back because of the ported barrel. But with good ear pro, you really can't tell that much. Out of this entire build, I will automatically say right now that there was a significant amount of reduced recoil with the ported barrel and slide combination. I mean, almost no felt recoil. With a good grip and using the cast pedal placements from the SCT frame, I mean, this was a dream to shoot. And even after allowing a friend who had had enough coin to get a ballistic velocity Doppler radar, we found that velocity of the 9mm projectile only dropped about 20 feet per second on average. Really not enough to prevent any stopping of a threat or use at the range, and it was worth having a teeny bit loss of speed just to have better control. Well done. Do you think I did Hunter justice by making this pistol? I think so. I think he'd be very pleased, but you let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that other stuff that everybody has to say at the end of every video that they make here. Should I push my luck in trying this again? Well, stay tuned and find out. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Peace.